Tonight, supermarket giant Woolworths suffers a loss of almost $1 billion.
Aussie travellers on high alert in Bali. New information suggests a terror attack is imminent.
The world's best big wave surfers drop in for a perfect Pacific storm.
And the Newcastle Knights make NRL history, naming 3 captains.
This is NBN News with Natasha Beyersdorf and Paul Lobb.
Good evening. Tourists are being urged to rethink trips to Indonesia after a warning from our government that terrorists are in the advanced stages of planning a new attack. Popular areas of Bali, Lombok and Jakarta all come with increased risk from returning Islamist fighters from Syria. With the region's manufacturing sector continuing to face tough times, there's a small glimmer of hope for Hunter rail manufacturer UGL. It's part of a joint tender vying to operate and maintain Newcastle's privatised transport network.
A stern warning has been issued to drone operators not to fly them close to bushfires following an incident near Cessnock yesterday. The RFS says while thankfully the craft didn't come into contact with one of its helicopters, it could have been disastrous.
Contamination at the Williamtown RAF base has seen some consumers scared off local seafood. The Baird government today announced funding to help change that, but it's come as a slap in the face for fishermen who've lost their entire livelihood.
Still to come, another mass shooting in the US. A man goes on a killing spree at his Kansas workplace.
A disgruntled worker has gone on a shooting rampage in Kansas, killing 3 workmates and injuring 15 others. Police say the gunman, a 38-year-old man who may have been recently sacked, picked his targets at random. It was a promise that would have seen our power bills become cheaper, a regulator's decision to cut hundreds of dollars from household electricity prices. But today, a successful legal challenge from the big networks has put a stop to it, with warnings the backflip will only drive bills higher.
Ahead in the news, football's scandal-plagued ruling body voting for a new boss.
And Premier Baird backs another medicinal cannabis trial.
The BBC failed to stop decades of sexual abuse by Jimmy Savile because of a culture of fear, an inquiry has found. The report claims staff were reluctant to speak to managers about complaints.
Celebrities were treated with kid gloves and were virtually untouchable. One witness told me that the talent were more valuable to the BBC than their own values.
Savile abused 72 victims at the network between the 1960s and 1980s, but died in 2011 without ever facing charges.
It's been a difficult year for the World Game, and tonight 5 candidates are vying to replace Sepp Blatter as the head of FIFA. The former president stood down amid a corruption scandal, and now it's just hours until delegates vote in his successor. Of the 5 candidates, the frontrunners are Europe's Gianni Infantino and Asia's Sheikh Salman.
A cannabis capsule could provide desperately needed relief for chemotherapy patients who suffer nausea and vomiting. The Baird government today announced a clinical trial for those who haven't responded well to traditional treatment.
To finance, and the share market has finished flat amid weakness in the resources sector. BHP Billiton lost 41 cents, while gold miner Newcrest gained 66. The big banks were mixed. ANZ closed slightly higher and NAB dropped 14 cents, while Woolworths shares picked up after losing ground earlier during trading. One Australian dollar is buying 72 US cents and 81 yen.
Well, now to Gavin Morris for a quick look at the weather. And Gav, how's the start of the weekend looking?
Well, it should be a lot cooler along the coast than what we've experienced over the last few days. Still very warm inland. We should see a bit of a drop in temperatures as well. But this weekend, we're going to have a very large, dangerous swell. Let's just go to the charts and we'll see what's happening. We've got 2 swells gelling here. We've got that monster swell from ex-tropical cyclone Winston in the north, and we've got the new southerly swell that's been linking up with that. So there's going to be a lot of water moving around up and down the coast. So some pretty dangerous rips and currents, etc., for people wanting to hit the beaches. There'll probably be be numerous ones closed. We've got some pretty big tides, so we're going to see coastal erosion as well. But I'll take a closer look at the showers and the windier conditions for the coast that are expected over the next couple of days soon.
Thanks, Gav. Coming up, a 50-metre trail of asbestos-laden material dumped near homes.
And in sport, Anthony Watmoe dismisses retirement talk despite a chronic knee injury.
A Sydney council has released security video of asbestos being illegally dumped on a suburban road, hoping it'll lead to the culprits being found. The Mayor of Parramatta wants those responsible paraded in court, and residents are just as fed up.
A shanty town known as the Jungle, located near the French port of Calais, will soon be bulldozed. Thousands of refugees and migrants living there have attempted to enter Britain on trucks or by forcing their way through the Channel Tunnel. Common areas like churches and mosques will stay in place.
A US Coast Guard vessel has flipped upside down while helping a boat that ran aground in New York. 5 people on the Coast Guard boat made it to shore without any injuries, while 7 others on the fishing boat, which was listing wildly in the rough seas, were rescued by helicopter.
Time for sport now, and he's been one of rugby league's hardest players. But Anthony Watmoe's time in the game is now in question. The 32-year-old says he's confident a knee complication won't be the end of him, and that retirement is a distant thought.
Coming up later in the bulletin, Hawaii 5-0, the world's best to tackle 50-foot monsters.
And we're live from the ninth season launch with 3 men named to succeed skipper Kurt Gidley.
They say 2 heads are better than 1, but it seems the Newcastle Knights are going 1 better when it comes to their captains. The club is tonight launching its 2016 NRL season in Newcastle. Samuel Jordan joins us live from the launch, and Sam, they've named 3 new skippers.
Australia's Nick Kyrgios will face Stan Wawrinka for the first time since their infamous on-court blow-up last year. The 20-year-old secured his spot in the semi-finals at the Dubai Tennis Championships with a 2-set victory over world number 7 Thomas Berdych. It was Kyrgios's 8th straight win.
Coming up, big names and big scores despite a blown-out conditions at Newcastle's Surf Fest. Praise for Jared Hayne from the new San Francisco 49ers coach, Chip Kelly, who's revealed he's excited to work with the former league star.
Sally Fitzgibbons and Stephanie Gilmore have continued their progression at Newcastle's Surf Fest today, both winning their heats. But there were some big-name exits in the men's draw, with Jack Freestone sent packing.
Still on Surfest, and the local hopes took a hit today with Jesse Adam eliminated. But Philippa Anderson and Ryan Callanan both looked strong on their way to the next round.
Dick indeed. Coming up, Gavin Morris will have the weather details for us.
Well, time to get the very latest on our weather now with Gav.
Thank you very much, Paul. Well, we've certainly had a hot week, very humid again today. One of those southerlies, not overly cool, but plenty of moisture wrapped up in it. The southerly set to continue across the weekend and into the early part of next week. Eddie Groot, though, caught just about every sunset colour possible in this one, looking west from Jimmy's Beach. A beautiful photo there and a beautiful part of the world. Rain falling over central Australia during the past 24 hours, hitting the red centre. Scattered falls still right throughout the tropical north. In the west, the trough line is dipping down, but it's allowing all of the heat from central Australia now to move westward. We're seeing a little bit of relief here build right throughout the southeast. Ex-tropical cyclone Winston there. Looks like it's just going to hover offshore of the Queensland coast, and now the swell is arriving. It's been getting bigger and bigger throughout today for all of the east coast. We've got 2 swells, the southerly swell combined with the northerly swell, and it's going to peak for us throughout tomorrow. But so too is those onshore winds. The cloud and the showers will have a burst coast, pushing through during the early hours of the morning and into tomorrow before it tracks on northward to the mid-north coast. But you can see it's very much an onshore influence that is settling in, somewhat gusty throughout tomorrow before backing off from Sunday, but it's still going to be quite moderate to strong. There's that big horseshoe trough line yet again. Scorcher on the way there for Perth. It's got its heat back. They've had an excruciatingly hot summer, and they've got another heat wave lining them up. Storms along that trough line. The Alice gets a reprieve. Beautiful in Adelaide. Cooler but humid throughout the southeast, and for Sydney, still hot for Brisbane throughout tomorrow. This is what we hit today. Still cracking the mid-30s throughout the upper Hunter. It was the low to mid-20s along the coast across the suburbs, but high humidity levels prevailed. It was very sticky yet again, sitting just below 90% along the coast at the moment. The pressure rising and the winds still very much out of the south to southwest. Now tomorrow they'll switch around to the southeast and they'll be pushing straight in across the valley, Port Stephens and the central coast, and they're going to be quite gusty. Showers in the morning and then breaking up a little bit throughout the day, easing off. Again, there's not much in it for us. We'll have little bits, drizzle patches at times underneath that cloud cover, and there'll be a little pushing further inland throughout the valley. Temperature-wise, again, it's going to be mid to high 20s, humid, cloud affected with showers more so during the earlier hours. Overnight we'll probably have a little bit and into tomorrow morning before backing off as we move through the weekend. Only topping out in the high 20s across the valley throughout tomorrow, so it is a big switcheroo there in comparison to the high 30s that we've experienced yesterday. Seas and swell way up there. The swell now up to 3 metres. It's going to be big. It's going to be quite dangerous. There's going to be a lot of water moving around. With the two swells, you've got the southerly and the northerly there driving through, so it's going to be quite messy. Seas up to 2 metres as well. Strong wind warning has been issued. Rock fishing, very dangerous, not recommended at all. Pretty big tides overnight. You've got the low tide early, just before 6, and the high there, smack on 12 midday. Sun's rising about 6:38, down at 7:33 with that moon now continually waning away. Looking ahead at this forecast, most of the shower activity moving through tomorrow, then drying out into the early part of next week, and then we'll see the heat return. It's going to rebuild, particularly for the valley, which will be lucky to see a shower or two. You get a little bit throughout tomorrow. Maybe some storms around the mountain areas. They'll certainly be possible. There'll be a little bit of instability up around the Barringtons and also off to the Watkins to the south, but overall Sunday looking good. Still very warm, humid, up around 30 degrees before the mid-30s return. Very similar story for the Central Coast. Overnight showers and a little bit more throughout tomorrow morning before warming up next week. Well, as we saw during the news, it was a blown-out affair with the southerly howling. It came through really early, really strong. It was moving fast overnight, and that's why it closed in first thing this morning. But what it has brought with it, a brand new swell, and it's going to be an interesting weekend for the finals of Surfest. So we'll see how it all going to stack up throughout tomorrow. Those onshore southeasterly winds are going to settle somewhat during Sunday for the finals, so we may have some nice waves there, maybe some A-frames with those two swells gelling together, because it's still going to come down from the north even more so in the coming days. So some pretty interesting sets will unfold. It's likely to peak in size throughout tomorrow. Water temperature is cooling a little bit. For your local news, stories, update anytime, you can log on nbnnews.com.au.
Thanks, Gav. Finally tonight, hurricane-force winds have produced incredible waves on Hawaii's North Shore for the famed Eddie Aikau Invitational.
Just cool. Plain scary.
Yeah. Cowabunga for sure.
Spirit of Eddie lives on.
That is the latest news.
Have a great weekend.
Good night.
Good night.